Hey everyone, Impact Reviews. We're going to be doing a review today on this guy, the Garmin InReach Explorer Plus. So I've been interested in doing this review for a while. I was just going to check how long I've had the item. Okay, so I've had this since June 2018, so not quite a year, but it has seen some pretty heavy use. Let me tell you what I use this particular unit for. Then we'll kind of go over um, the details of what it is. So, like I mentioned in the past, I own a digital marketing business, and part of that is that we work with a lot of realtors in doing property shoots. And so I really enjoy doing a lot of the vacant land shoots here in northern Arizona. We have quite a bit of just open space and parcels, 40 acres, 80 acres, 120, tons and tons of parcels everywhere. And people need those photographed. Or sometimes people want to go look at parcels, but they don't necessarily know the area well enough. So we'll go out and help them, track those things down. And so I came across this Garmin unit actually while I was on a buffalo bison hunt here in Arizona with these guys, Mossback, Arizona, and in particular a good friend of mine named Russ Jacoby who guides bison hunts near the north rim of the canyon, the Grand Canyon. He uses these all the time. He gives each of these to his hunter. He gives one of these to his hunters, who a lot of times are out sitting in blinds or with a guide waiting for bison, and there isn't good cell signal there. So how do they communicate? And this allows them to do it because what the Garmin InReach Explorer Plus is basically it's a normal Garmin unit, right? It does all the mapping, but it also has access to the Iridium satellite network, and so you can actually text on it using the satellite next. I'm sorry, Iridium. Yeah, I got the name right. You can text on it to people who have cell phones, to other Garmin InReach users. Basically, if you are able to receive text either through cell phone or through this, you can communicate through text messaging, not through audio. It's not a satellite phone technically. It's a satellite texting service. And so when I saw that, I thought, gosh, that is a really interesting unit. I can do the mapping. I can stay in touch. It has an SOS feature. Right, so you can access the GEOS, emergency responder system network, which is a global network, and you can do this anywhere in the world that you have the unit that you can gain access, to the outdoors and access to the satellite network. So I use it for this purpose. As a real estate photographer, hunter, long-range shooter, I find many uses for my Garmin InReach Explorer Plus. Most frequently, I use it for the tracking, the SOS and mapping features. Let me say something about the tracking. What I mean by that is the Garmin allows you to basically set kind of a breadcrumb feature or a tracking feature where you can text and email friends or family, and it will send them a link, which will then take them to Garmin's cloud-based mapping software, and they can see where you are. They can see your waypoints as well. You have a lot of choice in terms of how what you want to share with people, but usually when I go out, I'll share a text and email with my wife and with my dad, so that if I'm out, in the middle of nowhere and I don't check in at a particular time, they'll know exactly where I am because the coordinates will be there on the map. And so I find that to be really useful. So that's the tracking feature. Then, as I said, there's an SOS feature, so you can call for help. It's nicely kind of protected to avoid accidental activation. So you pull this back, and there is the SOS feature right inside. So it's hidden well, protected well from accidental engagement. So all that's very good. And like I said, the SOS feature connects to the GEOS network, which is an emergency responder network, and they will in turn contact local first responders if you end up needing help. And then there's also just kind of standard Garmin mapping software. Let's see if I can. This is going to look a little bit crazy, but because I've been out and about today, but it just has normal kind of Garmin mapping software on it, and so I use those three features primarily. So I use it to find locations and then to be found in emergency situations of all kinds. Oh, oops, I forgot to finish this sentence. Especially when cell phone service is not available. Okay, so all that's really important for me because I'm out solo in a lot of remote places where there isn't cell phone access and where I need to, find places that a normal GPS, Google Maps isn't really going to help you find, because we'll have to locate. In a hunting context, maybe we'll have a particular place where we want to go glassing for animals, or a place where we want to explore and look for animals, and so I can plug that in and it will, I can find it through the mapping software. Or if there's a particular parcel I need, I can plug in maybe the northeast corner of the 40-acre parcel, and I can then navigate to that location. So very, very versatile in that regard. Let's go just to the Garmin homepage really quickly. Make sure everything's good to go. Okay, so they have kind of a whole section on the Garmin for InReach in particular, the InReach global satellite technology. And they basically have three units. They have the InReach SE, the InReach Explorer Plus, and the InReach Mini. I'm not going to go through all these and describe the differences. For me, it made most sense to do the InReach Explorer Plus. You can sort of click on this and it will tell you, what the differences are. So for me, it was. You'll notice that the main difference between these two has to do with the mapping. I wanted the topo maps in part because, like I said, I'm doing real estate photography a lot and also hunting a lot, and I wanted to be able to look at sort of topographical features as opposed to just having navigation and tracking. So that was important for me. InReach Explorer Plus, for my purposes, that was most important. The Mini is interesting. The mapping is obviously not there. One advantage though of the Mini is that the Mini, as I understand it, syncs with some of the newer Garmin watches. And so some of those watches do have mapping software on them. I don't understand why these other units don't sync with the Garmin watches. I think that's unfortunate. I may get one of the watches at some point if they ever figure out how to sync them with the InReach Explorer Plus. For now, it's my understanding after talking, I spoke with some folks over at REI who had some experience with this. It's only the InReach Mini that syncs with the watches. So that's unfortunate. Not a game changer for me, but in any case. So like I said, there's two-way messaging, and so you can text people who have normal cell phones. You text with people back at home. They have a bunch of preset messages you can send, or else you can send it through the messaging app through the messaging feature on the Garmin. That's a little bit cumbersome because you have to sort of navigate letter by letter. Thankfully, there is, and I'll talk a little bit more about this later, there is an app called the EarthMate app, which uploads to your phone. The mapping is much better on the EarthMate app, and the two just sync with one another. And so you can do all the messaging though from the app, which makes it a heck of a lot easier because having to go through and select individually each letter at a time sucks big time. There isn't like a keyboard here. So you have the two-way messaging. That's totally awesome. I'll talk a bit about the messaging subscriptions and stuff, but you can also get weather. So I talked about this GPS navigation. You have the mobile social stuff. That's like the SOS and the messaging, and then weather. So you can get weather forecasts, which is really, really nice. And then finally, the EarthMate thing. It is, as it says, a full-featured GPS navigation app. It syncs very, very easily. It's very easy to use. I find that in most cases, I'm using the app way more than this. I mean, they're linked to one another, so they automatically sync up. But just for ease of use, I prefer to use the EarthMate app on my iPhone rather than trying to interact with this clunky thing. It's clunky in part because it's really durable, right? And that's really good. But it's just so much easier to use the Topo map on the in the phone. So that's cool that they have a synchronized app, an app that syncs up. Now let's talk a bit about the plans, the subscriptions. Let's see. Where are they? Oh, here we go. These are the ones that I use. Let me see if I can increase this size a bit. Okay. Now, they have these 4 different plans. I'm not even going to talk about the professional ones because I don't use those at all. I have basically gone between using the safety and the recreation. Because I just don't generally need unlimited of any of these. And so let's just start with the safety. SOS is always unlimited across plans. That's awesome. The real limitations come in with text messages. So the real question is just how often do you need to text? And I will say that the tracking, it sends a text at intervals, whatever you want. I think 5 or 10 minutes is the lowest interval. So every 5 or 10 minutes, it will send a text back and just say, hey, this is where the person is. Or we'll check in, send a tracking sort of breadcrumb back to your list of people receiving that information every 10 minutes, hour, day, whatever the increment is that you want. That does not count against your text messages. So like today, for instance, I was out photographing vacant land for about 4 hours. I think I had my tracking intervals set. Yeah, oh, here it is right here. 10 minutes is the minimum. I had it set every 10 minutes, so it was sending this, this tracking message back to my father and to my wife. Those do not count against your text messages. It's just the sort of normal text messages where you're communicating unique messages back and forth. I have switched between safety and recreation. Right now I'm at recreation, and I'm usually at recreation during hunting season because that's when I'm using this that's sort of the height of the year in which I'm using this. So right now I'm set for recreation. Preset messages. These are messages that are like in the library, kind of predetermined messages in the library of the unit. Those are all unlimited. That's really awesome. Tracking intervals. It looks like under the extreme plan you can do every 2 minutes. I have no need to do it every 2 minutes. 10 is fine. Usually every half hour is even fine. Under recreation you have unlimited tracking points. I take it back. I guess under safety it is 10 cents per tracking point. I've forgotten about that. Basic weather, that basically costs 1 text message each. I'm not certain about location pings, to be honest. Now that I look at it, I can't remember exactly what that is. I think what it might be is where you can send your location back to your to the list of people tracking you. I think might have to look into that later. And then you have a variety of weather options and then premium marine options. I think you just get more data. I haven't played much with the weather stuff, to be perfectly honest. I just typically don't need to use it. And this is just sort of the different pricing structure. And so like I said, I'm working right now with this one where it's $24.95 per month. And if you go over, then these are the costs for the messages. So I think it's very affordable from my perspective. I mean, this is definitely a business expense for me, but from my perspective, $24 a month to be able to text anybody in the world anytime I want to get SOS services whenever I need it. $24 is nothing. That's a huge, huge value from my perspective, and built in to have the mapping software. So, okay, that's just kind of a rundown of the unit. Let me talk about, let me go over my criteria really quickly, the criteria I'm using to evaluate this item, and then after I go through after I give you an overview of my criteria, I want to talk about some of the competitors. One competitor in particular, the Spot, sort of the variety of Spot systems. I'll talk about some mapping software I use alongside the Garmin unit, and then I'll kind of provide my sum up of the my evaluative criteria. So for me, there are basically 8 features or 8 criteria that are important for me. One is effectiveness of communication. How well does it work? How well can I communicate back and forth through the text system? Durability, that's extremely important for me because this thing's kind of banging around either in my car I generally have to put it up by the dashboard, have it hanging up there by the dashboard, just so it has constant kind of visual access to the satellite, or kind of good connection to the satellite. How is the mapping software? That's really important for me. How easy is it to use, both the unit itself and then the app? Integrated features. How well does it integrate with the app? Is it clunky? Is it a smooth? Is the connection smooth? Do they integrate well? That kind of stuff. Battery life is really important because I'm basically using, when I'm out hunting or working, it's on constantly and working constantly, sending back tracking points or integrating with the phone. So how long does the battery last? How effective is it? Subscription plans, is it high value? That kind of stuff. And then overall, do I think that the $374 I spent on the unit and then the $25 a month, is that of high value to me? So I'll go over those. I'll go over my own kind of criteria and reasons later. But let me first talk about the main competitor. What I think was in my shopping process was the main competitor and why I did not choose to go with it. And so you can see what it is. It's the Spot X. Spot has been doing kind of emergency satellite-based sort of rescue technology for a long time. In fact, I remember I bought one of these, my siblings and I bought one of these for my dad, who was often out hunting alone. And we thought, you know what, the technology is cheap enough now that you should have some way to call for help in a situation where you might not be able to get back to your car or something. And Spot seemed like the best option at that time. That was probably 10 years ago that we did that. And so when I got to the point where I needed to have some kind of satellite-based communication for emergencies, I looked at Spot because I had purchased one before, and then quickly realized that Garmin, right, the trusted name and GPS units, also had an option. I chose not to go with the Spot for a couple reasons. One is the main reason is that it doesn't have any mapping software. I mean, for me, that was a really big deal. The Spot X does provide, however, a lot of the same other features that the InReach Explorer Plus does. For instance, you can do all the kind of messaging and texting you want. It will do the tracking services and message tracking. It has a built-in compass, though not a map, right? You can do the SOS rescue. Similarly, you can sort of link it to social media. I don't care about that stuff. And then you can do kind of check-ins. And so from a communications perspective, it does everything that the Garmin does. What it lacks is the mapping, and for me that was really important. One advantage though of the Spot is it does have this built-in keyboard. So I'm imagining that it's like a ruggedized Bluetooth or a BlackBerry is what it looks like. This Garmin unit doesn't have a keypad there. That probably makes it a little bit more rugged, to be honest. I think just the simplicity of the design on the Garmin probably makes it superior from a ruggedness and durability perspective, whereas all these little keys, each of those represents a kind of weakness, I think, probably in the structure of the item, the structure of the gear. And so on the one hand, I love that they have a keyboard here. On the other hand, I also recognize that it kind of represents a weakness. So one thing I don't know about sort of the SOS feature here is how easily it deters accidental activations. That's one thing I like about the Garmin, is that you can bang this thing against whatever you want. It's not going to accidentally activate the SOS. I'm not sure what the Spot X is like. So Spot X is really the main competitor. It's a little bit cheaper, granted. It's about $100, and I got mine for $374. My Garmin for $374. This is $249, so significantly less expensive. It doesn't have the mapping software. For me, that's no go. Let's look at this. Let's look at the service prices. Let's see, there we go, right here. So they have a basic plan for $11.95 per month. That gives you 20 custom messages, SOS unlimited, so it's unlimited across all of them. Unlimited check-in messages, so those are probably just messages like, hey, everything's fine. Unlimited predefined messages, that's similar to what we saw with Garmin. And then tracking, kind of at the similar kinds of intervals. So I'm not sure what movement alert is. I'm guessing that maybe that has to do with whether you aren't moving for a certain period of time. Maybe it will send out an alert. Again, I'm not exactly certain. I don't seem to remember there being an activation fee with Garmin. Let's see. Personal plans. Yeah, I don't think. Let's just do a quick activation. Top users may experience all annual. Okay, annual plans it looks like are subject to an activation fee, but I don't think the monthly ones are. Here it seems like there's some kind of activation fee for all of their plans, at least as far as I can tell on the SpotX side. But in any case, they have comparable services and comparable pricing. SpotX may be a little bit less. Yeah, it's definitely a little bit less expensive. So maybe if that's if monthly expenses are a factor for you, then keep that in mind. But again, I would never go with Spot or SpotX simply because it lacks the mapping. So there are other Spot options. For instance, let's see. That's SpotX. Let's see. Let's go. What do we offer? So they have a couple different, like they have the Spot Trace and the Spot Gen 3. The Spot Gen 3 is like I think their smallest version, and I think it's only $99. No, it's $149. So they have the Spot Gen 3, and then the Spot, the Spot Trace, I'm sorry, that's their least expensive one. That's $99.99. So their most affordable option. So if you're maybe on like a really tight budget, but you still want the ability to track and do all of that stuff, then this might be a really good option for you. My understanding is that you cannot do any messaging from this, though. So if that's important for you, then to be able to kind of send off customized text messages and whatnot, then that may not be the best option for you. In any case, for me, the most important thing was that it didn't have any mapping options, and so that's why I didn't go with Spot. I use in conjunction with the Garmin mapping, I also use onX hunting app, and the only reason I use onX is that and this is kind of remarkable from like a real estate photography perspective. onX mapping will include, I think, the last names. I think that's right. Let me just check real quick. Will include the names of the owners of the different parcels. And so from my perspective, that's really helpful because I'm out there looking, for specific parcels that are just dirt, right? There aren't even always property stakes. And so, but I can know by looking at the assessor's page who the owner of that property is, and I can compare the two and make sure that they match up. So that's really the only reason why I use onX. It has, other hunting specific features that I really like, but from my real estate photography perspective, I just use it in conjunction with the Garmin unit because it lists the parcel owner's name. So let's conclude here and get to the criteria. All right, effectiveness of communications. How effective is the InReach Explorer Plus? It's effective. The only reason it gets a good and not exceptional is that sometimes there is a pretty significant delay in the messages. Sometimes 15 minutes long before a message will be sent, and I think part of that is just connectivity to the satellite. There may be weather conditions that affect that. So I would say it's exceptional if it were instant. And the other kind of, I guess, critique that I have is that you are kind of limited in the length of the message. So you get 160 characters, which in general usually is fine, and you can always send multiple text messages. But if you're working with one of the limited plans, then that starts to eat into your budget, right? So I do wish that you could get a little bit more than 160 characters. As of right now, you can only send characters. There's no way of sending like images or anything like that, which is just fine. I don't really care about that. So the effectiveness of communications is good. It's difficult to do the messaging from the unit itself. If you're going to be efficient with the messaging, it's much easier just to use the EarthMate app. on your phone, and it also the EarthMate app also responds to talk to text, and so that's kind of nice too. You just go into the let's see, go into messages, you compose a new message. It's very much like sending a text. So effectiveness, communication, all very good. I've never had to use the SOS function, thank God. Hopefully I never have to, so I can't really say, how responsive is it, how effective is the communication there. I really don't know. But I give it a 3, which is in my scale, a good. Durability, very durable. It's probably difficult to see, but this thing has been beat up and scratched up pretty good in less than under a year. So in my real estate context, I have this thing sitting up on the kind of the dash of the truck so that it has easy access to kind of line of sight access to the satellites. In a hunting context, what I do is I take this carabiner and I'll strap it to one of the MOLLE attachment points on my backpack and just let it sort of stay there. And so it gets banged around quite a bit there because I just take my backpack off, whatever, it gets scratched up a little bit on the ground. But it just needs to have kind of clear visibility, clear access to the sky and to the satellite network, so I keep it outside the pack so that I can be tracked really easily by loved ones and other members of and so that I can also receive messages too easily, without any hindrance. So it's durable. The thing's been beat up quite a bit. It's got some scratches on it, but it never has the effectiveness been, none of the functions have been hindered by the fact that it's been banged around so much. It does come with a really strong clip on the backside that I've occasionally used, along with this kind of nylon connection point for the carabiner. Really tough connection points here, really tough clips, so all of that's good. The charging port too, sometimes these charging ports can be a point of weakness. It is deeply inset, which I like. That does come with some disadvantages because there are some cords that are so big that they can't fit in there very well. That's not a problem for me. I've got the right cords, and then it has a really durable rubber flap that that you can press in there and that has some locking points, and so it keeps that water really well. It keeps water out of that charging area and also keeps it just well protected. It fits in there so snugly that it doesn't it's not easy to get it out. You have to work pretty hard to get it to accidentally flip out, so that's really good. Also, from a durability perspective, the buttons have proven to be really resilient. There's no play that's kind of worked itself into the buttons, so they all, have a good, seem to be good and stable, and also shown themselves to be water resistant. I've had this thing in quite a few wet scenarios. So that's all durability. I say it gets a 4. The thing feels to me built like a tank. It's not overly heavy, but it just feels like the rubber's very thick and that it's shock resistant, and all of the buttons seem to be holding up very well. None of them are sort of coming loose, nothing like that. So highly durable. I'm really happy with it. The mapping is pretty good. It's a little bit limited. You can download different kinds of maps, not just this sort of standard topo one. You can download different maps to the app in case you want to just sort of look at something other than the typical topo mapping that they include. One thing I do like about the mapping, the topo map that they include, and let me see if they kind of list. If they give it a specific name, I don't remember. Okay. Preloaded topo mapping viewable directly from, okay. Let's see. So they don't give too much information there, but it is kind of a hybrid map. It does have most of the roads that I'm on, even when they're dirt roads, have some kind of representation on the topo map. So that's actually proven to be pretty useful. It does have on the app a function, and also in this, what that they call a navigation app, but you shouldn't be confused. You shouldn't confuse that with like the kind of navigation you'll get on Google Earth. It's not going to tell you when to turn or something like that. What it's going to do when you're in the navigation mode is that you will tell it to which waypoint you want to navigate, and then it will show you, using a straight kind of as the crow flies line and arrow, it will show where you are on the map with respect to your desired destination. But it's just going to show you sort of directions as the crow flies, right? It's not going to tell you, turn right here, nothing like that. So the mapping, I'd say, is good. I have to occasionally turn to the Onyx because its mapping, its details seem to be a little bit better. And also, I just like the advantage of being able to see the names on the parcel number. So I'd say its mapping is mediocre. It's not amazing. Actually, I'm going to revise this. It's not mediocre. It really belongs to the good. It is very good. It's a hybrid. The sort of default map is a hybrid topo map that includes roads, not necessarily road names. Sometimes it's hit and miss, but it includes nice topographical features. It's clear to see them, and also roads and railroads and stuff like that. So mapping is good. I wouldn't say it's excellent, but it's good. Integrated features, how well does it integrate with the Earth map? It's excellent. And there's also, you have an InReach, everybody will have an InReach account. That's where you do all your kind of subscription purchasing, but that's also where you set things, do your settings, privacy settings, where you can decide what you want to share with people, if you're going to have them track you, that kind of stuff. All of it integrates basically instantaneously and very well. So if I, for instance, create a new waypoint in the phone, then it will almost immediately sync with the Garmin device. And so when I'm here doing, looking for kind of setting up my day to go shoot properties, I will, go onto the assessor's page, figure out what the coordinate is. I usually do mine in decimal degrees, and then I'll plug it into the phone, and it will almost immediately sync those coordinates and the waypoint with the Garmin device. So the integration is really, really good. My only complaint is I wish that they could get the InReach Explorer Plus to integrate with the Garmin watches, because I think that could be pretty cool. Not necessary, but just cool. Okay, so high on integration, that's really good. Battery life is awesome. I can usually use this so when I have it in tracking mode and it's kind of constantly sending back these tracking messages, 2 days easily. I can use it constantly. So that's really good. It will drain the phone on the battery, right? Especially if they're linked. It does seem to put a kind of a battery drain on the phone. No big deal. But probably 2 solid days on full tracking mode every 10 minutes, that really isn't too bad. It also charges really fast if you use the factory cord. I think it'll charge in less than 30 minutes from 0 up to maybe less than 45 minutes from 0 up to 100%. The subscriptions, I think, are high value, exceptional. So battery life's exceptional. I think the subscriptions are exceptional. $25 for 40 messages a month, no big deal from my perspective. That's high value on the subscription plan. So, and then overall value, I think it's exceptional. I mean, $374 for a highly durable, always reliable unit that I use probably 4 days a week. Either in a hunting context or in a real estate photography context. I have never had sort of failures or technical problems either with the app or with the unit itself. They both just work every single time. I've never had a technical failure, a technical glitch. The messages always send, even if it sometimes takes them a little bit of time to send. And so, from my perspective, super high value, right? Especially when you consider that this thing could literally save your life in a whole range of scenarios, or just get you out of a bad situation. Maybe your car breaks down. Maybe you run out of resources. Maybe you run into a problem. Who knows? Nature has a way of coming up with unforeseen circumstances that we didn't prepare for, and so that's what a unit like this is for. So you can call for help. And from my perspective, $375, $25 a month, small price to pay for that kind of peace of mind and for the ability just to communicate when you don't have cell phone access. So, all right, everyone, thanks. I know that was a long review. We're at 34 minutes, but hopefully that will give prospective buyers some much needed information on a device that hasn't, there are some good reviews on it out there, and hopefully this will just contribute a little bit more data. So, all right, everyone, thanks.